You are listening to the Better 2 podcast with DM Needham. Hi, gang. Donna here. Thanks for tuning into the Better 2 podcast. I greatly appreciate your support. Let's talk a little bit about Naomi. Naomi Fryers, is living in Melbourne, Australia. When she was in university, she graduated and she was about to go on to graduate school, and she ended up having a mental breakdown. At the time, she went through a lot of treatment. In fact, she ended up going into a psych ward. And we discussed that journey, that very dark journey at times, and how long it took her to get help, and how she's become an advocate about suicide as well as writing. Suicide awareness is something that she is very open about speaking. And she's also open about speaking about her journey to get the proper care and the diagnosis of PTSD, and how PTSD, we have a discussion about this, that PTSD is not only for vets, that a lot of us can have post-traumatic stress disorder and not even realize it. We also discussed her book that's coming out on World Mental Health Day called A Very Long Way. It's available on most platforms where you can get an ebook, and it's also going to be available in an audiobook form on Audible. So before we dig into the podcast, I will say that if you have any triggers and you are a little squeamish talking about mental health, then maybe this is not the episode for you to listen to, because we do dig into some deep subjects, and she does talk about being put into a facility against her will. But I think it's a very honest conversation, and I think that you can benefit from it. So please stick around and listen. Hi, Naomi. How are you doing?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. And you are in Melbourne, correct?
Yeah, we've just, I think, recently broken the record for the longest city in lockdown. So, in the world ever, or something like that. So, yeah, just chilling at home with the blanket at the moment.
When there's records, that's not one of the records you really, really want.
Nah, not really. I mean, there's a couple of states in Australia still open at the moment, but yeah, we're us in New South Wales are kind of, so where Sydney is, yeah, just still in lockdown.
Well, hopefully that gets lifted soon. So when I was discussing with your representative, she was telling me that you had written a book, and it's a lot about your mental health journey. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about what precipitated you writing this book and you coming to terms with the mental health issues?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not sure where to start. So I suppose I'll start with the actual story of what happened itself, I guess. I mean, I think I've probably, maybe since I was young, I've probably been predisposed to like emotional vulnerability, I'd say. But I mean, it never really affected my life in the way that like I needed to take medication or anything like that. And then after I was graduating from university, I was about to start postgraduate journalism, and I ended up having a complete nervous breakdown. And that experience was probably more shocking than it sounds, actually, because I lost the ability to write, which had always been my find a kind of solace and saving grace in life, that I like to like freely express myself and stuff. And then and I couldn't even speak in sentences, actually. And then the culminating, factor, I guess, was when I found myself in the back of a police divisional van on my way to a locked psychiatric unit. And that was an experience in itself, really. That could be another book. So yeah, then the recovery road from there, as you can imagine, is pretty long. So it's been over a 10-year journey. So I'd say I started really kind of getting my life back on track after about 10 years. And it was interesting. So at that point in time, when I knew that there was more to life, like I kind of got the courage after seeing my new doctor a few years ago. She promoted the idea that recovery is self-actualization, but not only that, like it's like a physical injury. So if you want to get better, you put in the work and you see where you can get to. Like it's about what you put in is what you're going to get out. And if you've got determination and grit and a few things going for you, the chances are your recovery is going to advance. So I wasn't scared of hard work or, and I was determined. And so I took that on, and she was kind of the first doctor who'd given me hope, in the sense of that, you can come out of this. And I think that's just a really important thing to have in a mental health recovery journey, to be honest, that sense that, you can get better. So then that was at that time I thought, there's more to life. And I'd started writing again because I'd been able to sort of, get my thoughts back in place, and I wanted to express myself again. And I had some lucky breaks with my writing, and, got syndicated in a few cool publications, and that was really going well. So I pitched the idea of like a freelance writing business, and I ended up at the Osmumpreneur Awards as a finalist for a big idea. And that was a really cool experience. By chance, this was at the same time. So it was in Melbourne in 2018. And then this lady was talking at the conference, the awards conference. She got up on stage and she was like, look, and it was like, when they say, it's so cliche for a writer to say this, I'm kind of embarrassed, but like when like someone talks and it's just like a lightning bolt hits you, it's as if they're like, there's a room full of people, but their message permeates you. And she said to the, well, she didn't say just to me, she said to the whole room, she's like, if you've got a story inside you that you want to tell, that you think maybe I should write a book, like I think people need to hear this, or it's yearning to be told. She said, you owe it as your duty to society and the community to share it, because that's your gift, and someone out there needs it. So imagine keeping that to yourself. Like, wouldn't that be selfish, kind of thing? And I just thought, oh my gosh, like it just hit me, like this is amazing. So anyway, I didn't know how all this would unfold, but I was there for writing anyway. By the end of the conference, I was like, well, I'm not sure about this business stuff, but I really need to write this book now. And now that lady's actually my publisher.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. So my book's actually coming out on World Mental Health Day, which is October 10. And it goes into my whole journey of recovery, talks about my lived experience and all the things, that challenges I've faced along the way. But also I'm very passionate about suicide prevention for a number of reasons, including my own lived experience, but also I have experience of having lost someone close to me as well. And so I wanted a two-pronged approach in giving back to the community, because I've, been gifted a lot of support, obviously, along my journey. And so as well as telling my story and hopefully giving other people like a narrative that, yes, recovery is possible, as well as that, I wanted to give back in a systemic way. So 50% of the sales proceeds from my book are actually going to a charity in Australia called Black Dog Institute, which, they do a lot of work around suicide prevention campaigns. And I'm really passionate about that because I don't know, I'm not sure what your statistics are like, but ours are draconian in terms of how many people we lose to suicide each year. Like it's double the national road toll most years. So, I mean, that gives you a pretty good indication of where things are at. It's pretty dire. So yeah, that's how it sort of all came about.
Well, that's a big journey. And I want to commend you for the way you phrase something, because a lot of times, okay, I read cards. So I read cards, and I'll be reading somebody and I'll mention to them that, that on depression and anxiety and things of that nature are tantamount to an addiction. You have one trigger, one symptom that can push you back into that state of mind, and you're battling with yourself. And a lot of people look at me when I say that like I'm insane, because how can I say that is the same thing as a drug addiction or alcohol or something else? But it is, because still there is that one trigger that can set you off on that path. So I applaud the way you were saying that, because so many people don't get it. They think depression and anxiety is just depression and anxiety, but there are triggers that can set you up. And, suicide rates are high here. And yes, I lost somebody to suicide. So I I understand that. And it has been a big lesson throughout my life, listening to other people talk about their journey where they almost committed suicide or not. And there's a gentleman from Australia that I interviewed this last season who was 16 and took a flying leap off a building, and he's paralyzed.
Wow.
And his name's Matt, and he's now an advocate. He goes around and talks to people. But at 16, he's 21 now. He's from Australia. But at 16, he snuck out of his house and climbed up on a roof and took a flying leap because he was looking for outside validation and he couldn't find it. So, I mean, go ahead.
I think, and that's one of the things I guess I talk about in my book, like when you're in that state of duress, like it's one flawed decision that can cost your life. Like there's no sort of, like, I mean, I think to a certain extent, the grace that saved my life also compelled me to help others. And if part of that is sharing my story and telling people that, you know, like you can hit rock bottom, you can be institutionalized, you can be forcibly medicated, and you can have all these awful things happen. You can be traumatized, and you can come out of the other side and do amazing things and live a happy life and have kids and be married and, you know, do all those dream things. Like, I think I owe that as well. So it's really, yeah, like I think I'm just always acutely aware, I guess, in the back of my mind of like the cost of suicide, not even just to the individual, but to the community, to families, to emergency service worker personnel. Like it is unfathomable, like the outcomes. And yeah, and I also just like really miss the person, obviously, that, you know, I wish was still here, and I feel like there's always something missing, but I don't want that for anyone else either. So,
No. So let's circle back a little bit. You said you were getting ready to go to graduate school. What kind of set you up for this breakdown?
yeah, so it's interesting. We don't really know exactly what happened, but the current school of thought by my doctor is that what happened was because I had like a neurological issue, and it affected my mobility and my physical health like quite dramatically. And so because I'd had trauma earlier, she thinks that it was like a reactivation of trauma that spiraled out of control. So because I felt like I was I felt inside like as if I was paralyzed, and I was scared that I wouldn't be able to move or cope or escape and all that thing. It was like a re-traumatization where I went back to a place that I'd been before that I couldn't escape from. And so that trauma actually turned into like a trauma-induced psychosis, which back when that happened to me, I guess, you know, like that's probably maybe 13 years ago. There was, you know, people knew about PTSD, but there was a lot less known about PTSD in terms of like trauma-induced psychosis. So on first presentation, like for all intents and purposes, they thought maybe I had schizophrenia. And so they were diagnosing me as if I was. And that was part of the problem, because for my, you know, my latest doctor, unraveling all the medication and stuff that I'd been put on over the years. And like, I'm not joking when I say like it would knock most people around, like out.
Yeah.
You know, like hardcore depot antipsychotics, some of which, you know, arguably you wouldn't even give to someone who had treatment-resistant schizophrenia. And I had PTSD all along. So it was just, yeah, it was a really unfortunate combination of issues. And I think my mental health just really spiraled out of control. Like I suppose it got to the stage where I wasn't medicated, but like I'd probably always been predisposed to a bit of depression and stuff like that. So maybe I have like a genetic vulnerability there. But yeah, it just got to the stage where I was also, you know, starting to get bit nervous about medical treatment and stuff, so I just didn't get help early enough. And that's another, you know, thing I talk about in my book. And when I'm, you know, discussing with people in the community, like one of the most important things for me is if you feel like you're slipping, like early intervention is like, I mean, prevention's better, but early intervention is imperative, because if it gets to the stage that you don't even recognize that you're deteriorating, that's when it can get really dangerous.
Yeah. When I was working, I was a insurance claim supervisor. And there's a reason I bring this up, because my husband swore that I was close before I left my job, close to having a nervous breakdown. And I would pick him up from the train at say 4:35, about 5 o'clock. And from 5 o'clock until 10 o'clock, when we went to bed, I was going on and on and on about work and all the stress of work. And I would sit at my desk and I would be like, I'm gonna quit. I can't handle this. And I remember thinking I was having a heart attack at my desk. And, no one really tells you it's anxiety. No one really, and you don't want to admit that you might have anxiety because of past trauma. And I remember when I finally left, I had my friend and my husband both say, this saved you leaving saved you from a nervous breakdown. And divine intervention on how I left was because we had a love seat that had a recliner, and we were sitting there, and my husband I had put mine down and I was about to get up, and he put the recliner down on my foot, and I ended up having to have ankle surgery.
Oh, wow.
So divine intervention. And
Absolutely.
so I ended up going to a therapist, and she diagnosed me with PTSD. And of course, when you think PTSD, and this is the big thing, like you're saying, PTSD, people think of, well, you must have been at war. The thing is, a lot of us, if we had a traumatic childhood, and I'm not blaming my parents, but if you've gone through a lot as a child, that is kind of ingrained in you, and you've learned how to live through trauma. So once again, we're going back to that trigger, when something has put you into a box where you feel so claustrophobic, which is me sitting at that desk with all the stress, it just blows up and you don't realize it. And then, fortunately, like I said, divine intervention. Otherwise, I kept going. I would have kept going back and being, dare I say, the punching bag, just taking it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening, because there's a certain point in there that even when you're sleeping, then you start doing your job, and your stress level keeps going up. So you're constantly going and going and going and never catching a break. So,
yeah.
So I know you understand.
You actually put that so eloquently. And I was having this conversation with a friend the other day, because we were both quite had physiological reactions. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but we had some pretty hardcore protests in Melbourne, like last week, to do with the vaccination and the unions, and it was just a bit of a political mess. But anyway, it got quite violent. And then I was saying to her, it's actually, I think people with trauma history it's like as if we tend to learn that conflict is dangerous, and then it can really blow up. But not only can it manifest emotionally, it can manifest physiologically. So we were both starting to feel really immunocompromised and just wrung out and tired. And it's amazing. And I think for me coming to terms with the fact that not only have I got PTSD, but I've also got functional neuro disorder, which is there's conjecture about whether it fits into psychiatry or neurology, and there's a bit of both. So I actually see a neuropsych for it. But the thing is, if you're psychologically stressed, it can manifest as neurological symptoms. So it really complicates things as well. And it can be really confusing. Like when your body just starts randomly playing up, you're like, okay. I know recently I was actually had a scary experience. So the side of my face actually just dropped. And I got taken to hospital by an ambulance because they thought I might have had a stroke. But actually it was just, it was part of the condition. I was feeling wrung out and stressed, and the side of my face just dropped. So it's just, FND is actually quite fascinating. Some people wake up with foreign accents. It's quite wild. It's just, it's an everyday adventure and journey. Learning to live with it, I can tell you.
It would definitely be a learning curve, I'm sure. So
yeah.
What made you, okay, so is there, I know you're a writer because you also have articles that you've written, you're a freelance writer. Have you ever thought about delving into the fiction world, or do you prefer to deal with, these are the facts, this is what I want to write, and that's it?
Well, I've always preferred nonfiction, although I'd have to say in primary school when I first started writing, I did like process writing, which is, basically just like writing child stories and stuff like that. And I'm working on like a nonfiction based kids book next, which is pretty exciting. But I think I prefer nonfiction, but I mean, some people would argue that because I do a lot of opinion editorials, and I guess some people would argue there's an element of fiction there. Like it's based on conjecture. Everything's, relative. So I don't know. I think nonfiction suits me. I do a lot of like processing my thoughts through my writing. So that's been another interesting thing that I think that if I hadn't have written my book and I hadn't been inspired by my publisher, Karen McDermott, all that time ago, like there are things that I would not have just emotionally dealt with at all. And it's really interesting. So when you put your story together, I guess you get to reframe the narrative. And I think there's a level of understanding in that, and also seeing things from other people's perspectives and opening your mind about your own reactions to things and being able to analyze like how you responded in situations. Like it is eye-opening, and it is cathartic as well.
I think, something you're saying about looking at your response to other people's responses, I think that's a lesson that it takes a while to learn. And you have to be more forgiving of yourself at times, because we are taught as children to be at such a high standard of, you need to act this way, you need to be this way, you need not to say your opinion, which, I mean, that's changing nowadays. The narrative is changing on that. But for a long time, you were not allowed to say that. You were allowed to be this way, and that's it. This is the expectation. And, finding your voice and then realizing, I mean, this summer I had a dispute with somebody, and it wasn't really supposed to be a big dispute. I was just you're always told, state your opinion, state how you feel. And it was because somebody had not given me the reaction that I thought they should give me. So I stated how I felt, because it kept building and building and building. And it felt like this person really wasn't my friend. So I stated the fact, and the person flipped a switch and came back at me hard. And I look back at that now, and it's irrelevant, but I look back at that and say, okay, well, my expectation was that she would ask me how I was doing, and she never did. And because she didn't, when I voiced that, she got upset. But when I look back at this months later and reframe it, the expectation was mine. I was putting my expectation on her. That doesn't make what the ultimate response she gave me correct, but I also admit that, yes, maybe I was wrong. And I think that's a learning process. When you learn that you have to look at your own expectations and not put them on other people. That is where your growth happens. That is where you realize, okay, I can't expect, I can sit here and manifest things, but I can't manifest the outcome of other people's reactions or emotions. That is on them. I can't make somebody else happy.
Yeah, that is so true. I love that. There's so much to be said about that. So I think I have just come to terms with the concept of writing my own permission slip as well. So because of when we were young, I think like, what you were saying about the fact that we were told, how we should be and what we should be and all those kinds of things. I think that's still really prevalent, especially here in Australia for young girls. Like there is so far to go in terms of that. Like I think, gendered roles and all that kind of thing. Like it's a jarring. And that's another thing I had trouble with in my mental health journey, because a lot of the doctors I saw were like kind of dinosaurs. Like they had done their training in a time that wasn't relevant to me, So it was actually hard to just kind of flip the switch on some of those dialogues. Like my new doctor, she's a lot younger. She's also a female. So she kind of gets and embodies the similar things to me, like in that she knows how gendered roles can impact your spirit, your body, your soul. Like it's just a totally different experience. And she also, like, I don't know. I just think it's very hard for people to relate to someone else's journey. One, if they don't have the lived experience, like they can try and treat them with medication, but that's only part of it. And then like, but also like if they have no insight into what that person's life like has been like in terms of their socioeconomic status, their gender roles, like there's a lot more to a therapeutic alliance than just giving medication to people. Like it's just, I don't know. I think I have had some really interesting conversations with people in the medical field and about how like sort of in terms of psychiatry, you know, because there's very limited diagnostic testing about how the perspective of one doctor can really shape someone's treatment and how it would be amazing like if we could have some more, you know, like more thorough testing, I guess, like for if it was ever available, you know, so that people not only know, you know, not necessarily what's wrong with them or what, but like just have a more holistic approach to getting better and getting well and their version of well and what well means for them as well. So yeah.
No, I'm not going to disagree with you about anything you're saying there, because I can tell you for a fact, when we had a male doctor, my husband and I would go to the same primary care doctor. And the thing is, it was a good thing because we'd both go in the room at the same time. And if one of us forgot or we didn't want to bring it up, the other one would rat the other one out. So it was good that way. But the care of treatment by this doctor was totally different. He would dive deep into my husband, and me, it was kind of like, eh. When he left the practice and we ended up with a lady doctor, she is still my doctor today. In fact, she moved clinic, and I still continue to go to her, even though it's a little further away, because she's thorough. And yes, she knows things. She knows what it's like to be a woman. And here's a very interesting, you'll find this interesting. So when I was 27, I had a primary care doctor, and she's like, have you ever thought, and sorry guys, sorry, I'm going to say this. Have you ever thought about a breast reduction? And I'm like, no, because I'm 27, your neck's not bothering, your shoulders aren't bothering, it's all fine and good. So now I have neck problems, and I'm older, and I've gone to a neurosurgeon, male, and I've gone to an orthopedist, male, and both of them, when I asked, shouldn't I get a breast reduction before I have neck surgery? Oh, no, it's not going to mess with your neck. Can I strap some weight to your chest for like 30, 40 years and let's see if it messes with your neck?
Yeah.
A woman would understand that.
Yeah. It's really hard. And that's what I mean. Like it's perspective. Like it's really, it's a judgment call. And that's what's really hard about psychiatric medicine, I guess, like for the practitioners, but also for the patients who get second opinions. And like, I'm not going to pretend that nepotism isn't like a thing in psychiatry. Like if you get a second opinion, the chances are you're going to get palmed off to the person down the corridor who's their colleague. So like it can be problematic. And that's even in like private systems, you know, and the public system's got its a whole other like cast of issues. So it's not easy. It's not easy to get treatment. But I think the thing is, once you find the right fit for you and you build a therapeutic alliance, it's just like gold. Like, and the important thing is just to not lose hope and just to keep trying, because I know I had some really rough times like getting to my doctor, but she is just the stuff.
But that's the thing. She understands you. She understands your physiology. She understands that, yes, sometimes, I mean, that's what men don't understand women as far as our cycles. They don't understand, you know, I mean, and it's always gotten a bad rap. It has always gotten a bad rap when you look at how it's been portrayed through history and how, you know, well, women are too emotional. Well, sure, we get emotional, but you guys are just as emotional. You just bury it. That's the sad truth. And if we go back to the dynamics of male versus female, we are taught that you're too emotional, and they're taught to not be emotional.
Yeah, I think that whole too emotional rhetoric's crap, to be honest, because if that was true, why would the gendered violence be the way it is? Like, I don't buy it. I think it's just, you know, I don't know. I think it's like rhetoric, basically, that's just been adapted and fed down the line, and no one's bothered to question it, or if they have, they've been ignored as well. So I don't know. Well, I mean, like I saw a meme actually, I think on Facebook, like okay, I'm too emotional, but I've never punched a hole in plasterboard. And I thought that is so perfect. Like, it
Yeah.
just summarizes everything.
Yeah. There's a place here that is a sports bar, and every time we would go there, my husband and I, because we used to have like this special on burgers or whatever, he would go in the men's room and we'd be like, we'd go in there on a Monday or Tuesday, and for lunch, and he'd come back from the bathroom and he's like, okay, well, this week the hand dryer's been ripped off the wall again. Oh, this week the mirror's been broken. Oh, this week finally they took the hand dryer out and they just put paper towels in. But yeah, every week we didn't go every week, but every time we went, he'd come back and he'd be like, something happened in the men's room. One time the toilet was crashed.
Yeah. Look, we could have a whole nother podcast about the toxicity of alcohol. I feel like it's a whole nother episode, to be honest. And I'm trying not to be too judgmental, because when I used to drink, I was pretty wild too. But like, I don't understand the bathroom vandalism, I have to be honest.
No, I mean, although, I mean, when I was a younger girl, I was dating with not dating, I was dancing with somebody, and this guy who had been drinking came over and he's like, I want to dance with you. I'm like, I'm dancing with him. And he got all pushy. He pushed me. Now, how romantic is that? He pushes me because I don't want to dance with him and texts the guy I'm dancing with. And it's like, and his friends, of course, come wrangle him and pull him out. And they're like, I'm sorry. It's like, it's fine. But it was just kind of like, what was that supposed to win me over? I mean, what the?
I think, like, I don't know. I think that's a pretty 3-year-old response, really, to get the girl's attention that you like by giving her a slapping. Like, it's really odd. I mean, I think, yeah, we tend to regress when we're drunk, I think, but that's new levels.
That's like really, really bad. And I mean, they pulled him out. It was just, I was kind of taken aback because I was just like, I don't understand this. Okay. And it wasn't I just met this other guy and we were dancing. It was nothing. Why would you do that? I don't know.
So we have a term, I don't know if you guys use it. Do you talk about, like, because in Australia, there's a lot of people, like guys on the internet in the MRA movement that are like, we call them incels. Do you have that? Like,
yeah,
involuntarily celibate.
Yes. Yeah, we had one that made national news because he went around killing a bunch of people in California.
Oh wow, you guys do take things to extremes over there, don't you?
Sometimes, and I don't mean to laugh about that, but yes, there are a lot of extremes here. Yes.
Yeah, like, actually, America is pretty wild, like, from an outsider's perspective. You guys tend to up the ante in everything. Makes us look like a little backwater.
I grew up in New Orleans, so when you're talking about alcohol and partying, not that I left when I was 16, so I hadn't hit that phase in my life yet, but I watched it. And I mean, for Mardi Gras, anything goes. Back then in the 70s, it was like, I saw my first drag queen and people were lifting up their top, here to get some beads. And, I mean,
you look very young to be around in the 70s.
I am going to be 54 in a couple of weeks.
No, well, I thought you were my age.
No.
No way.
Good genes.
Unreal.
I usually don't tell people my age, but yeah. So good genes. But thank you.
Wow.
Thank you very much. So, yeah.
Yeah, I actually I stopped drinking completely when my son was just pretty much a baby still. So I was a toxic drinker. Like, I think, there's actually a lot of research at the moment going into the fact that like, people who have had traumatic lived experiences can react badly to alcohol, not just alcohol, but drugs in general, like all kinds of things. And it was really interesting because I always had a problematic relationship with alcohol. But then it just got to the stage where, I think my husband actually staged that intervention. Like, he was just like, look, I'd hate to say it, but if every time you drink, there's a problem, you're a problem drinker. And I was like, ooh, that hurt. And that zing.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the end of that career.
Yeah.
So and he wasn't doing it in a way to, like, put me in my place in any way. Like, he's a really loving guy, and he didn't want a designated driver because everyone was like, oh, he just wanted to party. I'm like, nah, he'd seen enough. Like, it was time. He called it as he was seeing it. And I kind of needed that, actually, because it's hard. Like, I mean, the one time I did see myself on video drunk, I was traumatized.
Oh,
Like, it was awful. And if I had probably had that experience again, I think I would have stopped earlier. But he was quite aware of what I was like. So it was a fair enough comment.
yeah, I have a couple of pictures of the times when I've been drunk, and the first time was, it's rather amusing to look at that. The second time, well, yeah, I blame I had left my first husband, and I had gone down to New Orleans to see my dad, and my stepmom's like, hey, let me take you and your friend out to the French Quarter to drink. Yeah. Those pictures I'm not very proud of at all. Because it's like this person that, if you look at me and you know me, you look at this person and go, there's no way that's you.
Wow. It's amazing how we change, though.
Well,
like, I mean, how our alcohol and drugs have the capacity to change us.
I don't smoke.
It's scary.
I don't smoke,
Right.
but I will tell you, when I have been drinking in the past, I will smoke. Well, maybe I should clarify. I puff. I don't really inhale. But I haven't done that in 20 something years. But yeah, it was something. When I had a drink, I wanted a cigarette if I was at a bar. But most of the time when I would go to a bar, and I'm very adamant about this, there's only been a few times when I've been drunk, I would actually go before cover, get in, get some water, and then go climb on a speaker and dance to some 80s music, and I was good for the night. I was good.
Not even a podium, a speaker. That is impressive.
Speaker.
You guys do take things to the next level.
The worst was, there was a club in Shreveport called Cowboys, and it was New Year's night, and we're going back to 1987, 88, and the Jody Watley petticoats, all the petticoats under the skirt, and I'm up on the bar dancing with a couple other girls. So yeah, I may look nice and reserved, but I had a few wild times. But I was sober. I was drinking water. I just,
A streak of Coyote Ugly.
Exactly. Coyote Ugly before Coyote Ugly.
I love it. It was a good movie. It was unreal. It's just, I actually still struggle with addiction in some ways. Like, I still smoke, and I have this ongoing, it's actually a nightmare. It is a nightmare. And I don't know, the cost of cigarettes are incredible. Like, over here, it's like, I guess, $50 for a packet of cigarettes.
It's got to be about that. But I'm going to tell you a trick that my father-in-law, who stopped smoking, did. And he passed. And when we cleaned out his house, we found this. So my husband told me that his dad said one day, I'm going to quit smoking. And if I decide to start smoking again, I'm going to finish off this pack. This was like in the 1970s. He died in 2012. And when we were unpacking, we were going through his stuff, we found the pack of cigarettes. He never smoked again. So if he would have smoked, he would have smoked that cigarette that had been in there since the 70s. He didn't seal it in a Ziploc, nothing. So just think about how bad that would have been.
Wow.
And that's what kept him from ever doing it.
Wow. See, I don't think even that would stop me.
Okay.
Like, it's awful. I think like, if I ran out, I'd go resort to tea bags. Like, it's I've tried to give up so many times, and I'm just trying to get to this, like, trying not to get to the stage where I give up giving up. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I don't know if it's true. Maybe I'm just telling myself this because it is an addiction, but I feel like I enjoy it. Like, it's just, I grew up probably from when I was 16, and I'll just, sneak off with my friends or my auntie and have a Horizon menthol, and I never stopped doing it. Like, so I don't know. Yeah, I did give up for like quite a while. So like maybe 18 months at one point. And that was actually when I was working, at the hospital on the adult mental health inpatient ward. And the reason I gave up was pretty powerful, actually, is because the patients at that time, well, they still aren't, but they can't leave the ward to smoke. And I didn't want to trigger them by like smelling of smoke, and
Yeah.
they're locked in there and confined. And I didn't want to go in there smelling of it, so that then they would be triggered and stressing, and, so I just stopped. But then as soon as I left the job, I was like, oh, good. Oh, here we go again. Unreal. Don't start, kids.
Well, there's a funny story. Once again, the husband, he had a brother, a slightly older brother, and the older brother's like, hey, you want to smoke? He's like, sure. So he takes the pencil sharpener, empties the shavings into a piece of paper, rolls it up, gives it to my husband, says, go ahead, take a drag, lights it. My husband said there was flames shooting down the back of his throat.
Oh my God. Oh no.
Yeah. So there's a warning for kids. Don't try that at home.
Yeah. And that is just, the American equivalent of bouncing your sibling on Lego. We just do things like pretty moderately over here.
No, there were some stories he told me, having siblings, that I'm just like, I am glad I was an only child, because no.
I do touch on in my book, the squabbles and stuff. I kind of look back and think it's funny that I used to have with my sisters, in particular on long road trips. Like, she breathed on me, she looked at me. Like, it just used to go on. And to get to my grandparents' house from where we grew up, it was like 2.5 hours at least, I guess. And it was back. I grew up in the 80s, and I was born in the early 80s. And my mum was a teacher. She thought nothing, like very Australian though. Take off her Aussie flip flop, back over the bench seats of the old Kingswood, whack us across the legs. Like, it was part of the trip. Like, it was just the adventure. And we knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Like, it's very different now. And I think that's a good thing, to be honest. Like, it's very counterintuitive when I reflect now that, like, when the kids are fighting, you get involved by whacking them. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think, it's good that times are changing.
Yeah. I mean, I had two stepdaughters, and this may not, I was young when I had my two stepdaughters. I think I was 22, 23, 25 at the tops. And I remember the oldest one, who was, I think at the time she was about 8, pushed the 6-year-old and hit the 6-year-old. And I just got in front of her and I said, all right, you want to hit her? You got to hit me. And she looked at me. She's like, what? I said, well, technically you're bigger than her and I'm bigger than you. So it evens out. So if you want to hit her, you have to hit me. No, it's okay. And I did that with my step siblings as well, because at a certain point when I was in high school, I had a stepbrother and a stepsister, and my stepbrother was hitting on his sister. And the first weekend I go up to meet them, my mom and stepfather are like, you're going to watch them. I don't know these kids. Okay. I'm not a babysitter. I've never babysat. And he's doing this. So yeah, I just pushed him up against the wall. I said, you want to hit her? You hit me. No. Okay. And it really balances it out. It stops the fighting. And I hate to say it, but I think I gained my stepbrother's respect at that moment.
Yeah.
Because it was just kind of like, oh.
Yeah. Well, look, that's another thing. Like, when kids, and like kids can be horrible, we know it. We were horrible probably when we were little too. But I think like it's a really interesting dynamic when a bully gets stood up to as well. Like, it's just like that moment of shell shock, and it's very life-changing for everyone involved, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, from what I understand, he was terrorizing her a good bit, and I just got in front of him because it was just like, dude, chill. You know, of course, chill wasn't the word back then, but
Yeah.
So what do you, after lockdown, what are your plans besides the book launch?
Well, I've actually got a TED Talk coming up as well. So I'm planning on recording that in studio as soon as lockdown lifts. I had wanted it to come out around the same time as my book. I just thought it would have tied together nicely, but because we've been in lockdown for so long and in and out, it just hasn't happened. But it will be coming out, and I'm doing it through the London Dairy Studio. So it's actually going to be on the power of storytelling, and I guess my idea, because TED Talks are based on an idea concept. The concept is around, like, imagine if we embrace storytelling as a suicide prevention tool. Like, how would things be different? And I'm really passionate about that. I think it's an amazing conversation to have. So I'm keen to get that out there. But also, I've got some other projects in the pipeline, and I would ultimately, my goal after this period's over and we can sort of get back to COVID normal or whatever that looks like, I would like to set up like a diverse writing incubator so that I can actually champion people who would otherwise not be represented well in the literary and publishing spheres. So people who would be underrepresented in terms of, like, be it gender, if they're like maybe a refugee or from a cold background, or maybe have a disability or a different lived experience. I'd just like to, I feel like, in some ways I've had my turn. Like I've got to heal, and I was kind of graciously handed the mic, and I've got my story out. But I think that everyone's got a story. I'd like to champion more people to tell their stories, because I know the process of telling your story can change your life as well.
That's kind of why I'm doing this. I mean, besides, now I'm having some more musical guests and stuff, but the whole fact that even people that I get on here that talk about music, they still have to share a story. I don't want somebody just to come here to promote something. I want somebody to be real. I want somebody to tell their story, and I had a gentleman who was on The Voice, the American version of it, and his dad committed suicide and his best friend committed suicide. So even somebody that you may not suspect, they've dealt with that issue. And my very first podcast I did, which was a half-hour episode, was about saving my mom the first time. And,
wow.
Ultimately she did it. And that's the thing, when you're talking about suicide from the other point of view, from somebody that's a family member, when your hands are tied and you can't help them and they're continuing on. I mean, the phone call, she called every day for a month, and I tried telling my stepfather to get her help and everything because I wasn't living in the area. But when she told me that she wanted me to go in her master bathroom and find her in the shower stall, she was going to blow her brains out, and she wanted me to come find her, and she was doing it in the bathroom so there wouldn't be that much mess. And I remember telling her, firstly, I told her to get help, but I remember telling her, if she loved me, you would not ask me to do that. Because how do you ask your daughter to see such a horrific thing?
I had a conversation recently about the carer gig, about just how hard it is from and I didn't always feel like that, because when you're in the throes of mental illness and you've got someone like instructing you what your next move should be, it is not good. Like you don't feel like like at that time sometimes you're not receptive to feedback, when you're struggling with mental illness. But at the same time, like, the carer gig is so hard because you have to actually watch the person go through it and still be helpless. Like, if you're going through it, you have capacity to change, at least not even what's happening, but how you're responding. The carer gigs just, I take my hat off to my husband and people who, just try, like, loyally and stoically, just to make any iota of difference to make someone else's life easier, because it's so selfless. And they get no acknowledgement. Like, the work that carers do in the community is just, it keeps everything going.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody about, if you're contemplating it, please get help. But there's also a certain level that, and this comes from this, you have to forgive yourself if your family member does it, because there's certain people that are on a mission to do it. My mom was on a mission for many, many, many years. talking to my dad, it was from when I was a kid. So,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. Talking to my dad, I mean, it was many, many times, so she tried it in high school. She tried it after I was, living with my soon to be husband and had kids. So certain people are on a mission, and you have to come to terms that sometimes you can't save everybody. And I'm all about suicide prevention and awareness, but you also have to understand that some people don't want to be saved. And what can you do?
Yeah.
What can you do?
And you know what? That's such a powerful point, because I think I actually, until I transferred into my new doctor, I didn't realize that I was playing a role. Like, I was playing a role in my illness. So, like, you have to make choices, but I didn't actually realize I had another choice. So, like, for example, the doctors had said, oh, she probably won't go back to work. She's not going to recover. She won't come out of the public system. She'll always be on antipsychotics. And at that point, like, I thought that's just how it is. So it was how I was. But I didn't know, that I could get better. So it's very interesting, like, about when we choose, and like that you can play your role up to where you're given permission to as well. So it's really complicated, and it's so hard to judge where anyone's at. But it must have been really awful experience. I'm
Well,
really sorry.
I have to share, because you said something, and this is about the role that you play. So in high school, there was the thing that led up. She took pills. That's the story of me saving her. But I'm giving you the short version. She was in a coma for 3 days. They had to pump her stomach. She's in a coma for 3 days. Then they put her on a psych hold. Now, mind you, if she took this many pills, and when that didn't initially work, she was going to go out and start the car in the garage. That I put a kibosh on, and this is when the pills started kicking in. She becomes very proud of herself, because bipolar was not diagnosed at this point, and a lot of mental illness was not, it was very narrowed at this point, because this was 1984, I think. So she gets out, and she just tells everybody, oh, I'm burned out. I was burned out. I'm okay now. I was burned out. Does not get any other treatment. Does not seek any other treatment. Then fast forward, I'm about to move to Dallas. I'm in a band. I'm dressing kind of wacky, I guess you would say. I'm wearing hot pants and a velvet coat and a big hat. Something that was not normal for anybody. It's for a creative person, sure. She's like, you have mental illness. You need to go to the mental health hospital and get checked out. I'm like, what? Yeah, you need to go get checked out. Okay. So I go, and I'm sitting there contemplating my own mental status at this point, going, am I crazy? So I go and do all the tests, all the psych tests and everything. And I talk to the guy, and he looks at me and goes, why are you here? I say, because my mother thinks I'm crazy. He goes, you're not crazy, you're creative. And if you don't get out of her house, you're going to die, because she's going to kill you. She's going to drive you nuts. So you need to get as far away from her as possible, because she is not sane. You're not crazy. You're creative. And so I went back home, and I told her, and you know what her response was? They don't know what they're talking about. Okay. So I applaud you that you're willing to face your mental health and face who you are. I mean, I admit, I have a therapist, and I talk to my therapist on a regular basis. And I think it's very healthy and natural to have a therapist and to address your mental health.
Yeah, it's just like physical health. I mean, if you break your arm, you don't let it go untreated. But it's actually, there was a long period of my life, I guess, like leading up to probably my breakdown, I'd say, that, I didn't have the insight though, like of how not only how sort of unsettled I felt, but like the implications of that on my physical health as well. So like it just all came crumbling down. I hate to see other people get to that stage. I mean, they do, but it's not a healthy way to be. I think that's how counterintuitive the taboos around mental illness are, like, and not having those discussions is just holding everyone back.
Well, I've talked about this before. my husband was terminally ill. And at a certain point, I was told this. And for years, I took care of him. And I mean, he was functioning, he was mobile, he was on dialysis, he was legally blind. So he had parameters that he couldn't deal with. And he had depression. Because, yeah, if you know your time is limited, your depression is going to be heightened. After he passed, our primary care doctor looks at me and she goes, "Do you realize how much anxiety you were under?" What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about, because you live it, just like the trauma we were talking about as a kid. You live it. And I've come to the realization recently that for me, after this, it's a year and 3 months later, I've come to this point where it's like, you've been living in fear. You're still living in fear. What kind of fear are you living in? Because you were in that fear for so many years. How do you get out of it? And that's the last few weeks. That's what I've been trying to think about. It's like, how do you get away from fearful thinking?
Yeah, it takes work. It takes
Yeah.
cognitive behavioral therapy and, a lot of growth mindset and self-examination. And, I think sometimes I just, sit back and think like, is the way I'm feeling healthy, and why am I, and then I'll be like, I'll write it out to get to the bottom of, where it is. But it's interesting, the things that pop into our heads and bodies and, thoughts and stuff about, like, I tend to be a pessimist, and I'm less of it these days, but it's actually, I think it's like, a DNA thing. Like, I feel like I come from a family of stressors. Like, we're always, if I'm not stressed, I'm stressed about being stressed. Like, it's just,
Well, they say it's generational, that some of our emotional status is generational. And when you start unpacking your parents and your grandparents, because your grandparents weren't the same people that your parents knew. I mean, if you really know, that whole thing about, well, they never treated me like that. How come they? Because they don't have the responsibility. They get to do whatever now they want with you, with the grandkid. But, you were talking earlier about the fact that the people protesting, well, that's going to heighten your fear. That's going to heighten your anxiety. And I mean, that's the thing with COVID last year. You had all the talk of everybody dying in it. And I mean, not that that's not happening now, but it was just so heightened.
Yeah.
And we're still kind of, how do you step back from fear? How do you get out of it? And fear can control you so much, and it goes back to, it's a 4-letter word, but there's the fear of failure and there's the fear of success.
Yeah.
There's the fear of living life, or fear of being, giving in. So many.
Yeah, it's a lot to navigate.
Yeah.
For sure. And also, and the fear of being judged is like the one for me. It's just like, oh, what if they think I'm not sure how appropriate this is, actually, this expression, but I really live for it. My auntie used to say to me when I was little, because I was always, even as a little girl, I was like, but what if, and she's like, well, what if your auntie had a penis? She would have been your uncle. Like, no one would care. It wouldn't make a difference. And I'm just like, it's so true. Like, we wouldn't know any different. Like, there's not a what if. Don't worry about it.
But the thing is, we're taught to judge and play what if and all these things. And, my therapist will be like, you don't fortune tell. And it's not so much, I read cards, but this is a totally thing. It's like you sitting there going, it's the expectation thing. Okay, well, they should react this way. This is how this should play out. Well, no, this is life. Life is a freaking roller coaster that you make one, you leave the house a moment later, you're stuck in traffic, It's unpredictable. And I think that's where we need to we need to look at the mental health aspect of everything about life, because growing up now, especially now, these things are always, I mean, you grew up in the 80s, granted you were a little kid, but you still had that freedom. You still had you didn't have everybody knew where everybody was. You didn't have, oh, let me look at this. You could still know a phone number or an address.
Yeah.
Now it's like, well, I know my phone number. Do I know anybody else's phone number? Nope.
I only knew where people were because their bikes were parked out the front, like
yeah.
or their roller skates. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely different. There's a lot of challenges to navigate for our kids. I'm not looking forward to, my son getting into the teen years, because I think boys are pretty gross as teenagers anyway. They just tend to just grunt and stuff from what I've heard and smell. My son's a delight at the moment, so yeah, I'm not really looking forward to that. But yeah, well, there's just a whole evolving world out there, and I'm actually only just coming to terms with a lot of technological advancements, to be honest, because after you have a nervous breakdown and you're on hardcore medication for a long time, like, you forget that technology evolves in the
Yeah.
interim. And then you're like, all of a sudden, like, I'm not sure how this remote works. And how do I flick it to Foxtel? Like, so that's a whole new other
Yeah.
set of challenges too.
So it's a whole new world, really.
Yeah, it's like coming out of a coma.
Wow.
But like, yeah. Yeah.
So where can people get your book at?
Yeah, so as of October 10th, my book will be available online through Booktopia, Amazon, also Audible, it will be on, and Fish Pond.
Are
So all
you
of those.
Are you narrating, or is somebody else narrating?
No, I've got a narrator, but she's amazing. Like, she's just perfect. So yeah, it'll be great.
So is there anything else you would like to share with my listeners?
No, I wanted to say thank you so much for having me, but also, like, in this format, because I really appreciate the fact that you've been open with me too, because it's not always easy, like, as the interviewer or, the person who's hosting, to actually be as open as well. Like, I really feel a lot more comfortable to divulge, my own experiences when you're open to doing the same. So it just makes it really a lot more authentic. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. That's one of the reasons when I started thinking about doing the Better Two podcast, it was like, okay, I'm asking people to lay themselves bare. And the reason I did the first episode with me by myself and talking about my mom was because if I'm asking you to come into my space and share something personal and heartfelt, then I better lay myself bare.
Yeah.
Because it's only fair. And that's why, to me, if somebody's listening in and they can glean something either I say or you say or both of us say, and it really resonates, then we've done our job. I've done my job. You've done your job, and we've made a difference. We may never know it, but the fact is, if somebody connects with it, that's what's important. So I'm glad you like the format. I've been told by a lot of people that, even a couple of singers, are like, I really like this because it's not the traditional interview. So
yeah, it's refreshing.
Thank you. Thank you. So I will put all your link for your books and everything. I'll put that on the bio and stuff on the website. Your website. Are you going to have your website back up and running, or is that
Yeah,
okay?
It will be. Yeah, it will be. Yeah.
Just want to make sure. I will have that also in the bio for the podcast. So thank you, Naomi. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wow. Okay. So that was a great conversation. Naomi, she was very candid, and I think that when we can have an open dialogue about not only mental health, but the way that men and women are treated differently as far as mental health and even physical, regular medical health, I think it's important that we get the treatment that we need, whether, if it's a mental illness, if it's a physical illness, it needs to be addressed, because the mental can morph into the physical. So if you are feeling stressed, or you're feeling overtaxed, or you just need a moment, take it. While the world may seem like it's going 1,000 miles a minute and you can't get off, step back, take a few minutes. If you got a lava light, stare at the lava light, stare at a candle for a few minutes. Anything that's going to calm you, that's going to help you de-stress. Find a way, when we talk about meditation to help calm people, which we didn't in the episode, but when we talk about meditation to calm people, to calm your soul, it doesn't have to be closing your eyes and getting lost in the darkness. You can find a candle to meditate on. You can find something that's just going to bring you peace. And that's really important, because we are living in crazy times. And there's a lot of fear out there and a lot of chaos and a lot of stress. And we all need to take a step back and treat ourselves a little bit more kind, a little kinder to ourselves would be a very nice thing, a very important thing. So thank you, as always, for tuning in. And I greatly appreciate it. And I hope that, Naomi's book, A Very Long Way. Yes, I'm a little tongue tied. I think it's going to make an impact. And she is going to be an advocate for young writers that, maybe don't have a place or a platform. And I'm sure her TED Talk is going to be amazing. So keep an eye on her because she's got a lot to say and she is a great advocate. So once again, thank you guys for tuning in and I'll catch you next time. Bye. You are listening to the Better 2 podcast with DM Needham.